The child turns 3 years old, and he is brought to the Melamed, to the Rebbe, for the first time. The minig in Klal Yisrael is to smear some honey on the aleph beis, and the child licks the aleph beis. The idea represents how we're supposed to take advantage of the many pleasurable tastes that a child experiences as he matures, and use them in directing the child for the proper things. Basically, as any Rebbe can tell you, as any parent can tell you, we use what we call nash as a form of reward and direction. Sometimes when children get too much of it, whenever they want it, and it's absolutely not restricted, obviously it's detrimental. It has the opposite effect, both what it does to them physically and what it does to them in terms of social adapting to the realities of life. Yet the Torah Kedusha, in giving us the reward for our melus b'Torah, for working hard in Torah, basically also gives us a series of rewards that generate around food. The Torah tells us in bechukosai tilechu, v'es mitzvosai tishmu, l'sisa my son. So what is your reward? V'nesati geshmeichem de'ita. I'm going to give you the rains in their proper time. And as a result, the land will yield her produce. The Eitz yitin piryai, and the trees of the field will yield their fruit. And we're told v'hisig lechem dayish es batzir, that the threshing shall be so much, will be so overwhelmed with the abundant amount that you have to work with, that by the time you're finished, you're going to have to be busy with the vintage. And with the vintage, there's going to be so much of that, you're going to be busy until the time of zera, until the time of seeds, until the time that you have to sow. And again, the reward continues. Food. You'll eat your bread, you'll be full, you'll eat a little. There'll be a blessing inwards, that you'll feel satiated. So until now, it was only food that you were promised. And finally, the Torah turns to a different aspect, and that is the promise of security. You're going to dwell in safety in your land, and there'll be peace. So Rashi explains the connection, because you can have all the food in the world, but if you're worried about a war knocking on your door, it's not going to go down very easy. It's a little use to you. So after the promises of ample food, the Torah then begins, all for the reward of the melus b'Torah, a series of promises in terms of security. Nesati shalom ba'aretz, v'shechavtem, you'll be able to lie down, v'yein machvid, you won't be frightened. The chayira will not come through your land. The cherev loisavar v'yartzechem, the sword won't even pass through your land. In other words, armies won't even pass through your land on their way to engage in battle with some other country. Reb Tzadok HaKohen in the Sefer Pri Tzadik explains the sequence over here, the connection between the series of blessings in terms of food, and how that ascends to blessings in terms of peace as follows. The Yikar Shalom is from the Kitchug of the Yetzirah. As David HaMelech said, Ein Shalom be'atzam mitnei chatasi. The milchama that every person has throughout his lifetime is the battle with the Yetzirah, and the many different nisyonos that a person faces. With his taivos, with his money, with his moods, with his emotions. The pasuk in Mishlei says, B'rtzos Hashem darkei yish, when a person does things right, even his enemies will make peace with him. The Gemara in Bava Basra, quoting of Yeshua ben Levi, says that refers to the Yetzirah. Shlomo Melech refers to the Yetzirah as the ultimate enemy. And if we do things right, Hashem allows us to make peace. Peace means the enemy doesn't bother us. Chazal tell us, Kiseifi lamuchama levecha, and many of the Sifrei Drush understand this refers to the battle with the Yetzirah. But the Rebbe Rabbanan said, this is not just a drasha. This is also included in the Pashut Pshat in the Pasuk. The Mochenes HaYetzer is the Milchama, that every person has to endure and to deal with in his lifetime. In the Sifri it says, V'yachalta v'sevata, you will eat and be satiated, Yisham milchem pen yifta levavchem. If a person eats and he's full, there is a danger of yifta levavchem, she'ein adam moirid b'hakadosh baruch hu ela mitoich seviyah. As the pasuk says, pentachol v'sevata, and as a result of eating and being full, not worrying, feeling too satiated and content, v'ram livavecha and v'shachachta. There are two aspects to our heart. There is the right side that represents the Kiddusha, the Yetzer Tov. The left side that represents the Yetzer Hara. The Gemara in Bava Basra and Daf Yud Beis says, Liachar she'oichel v'shoisa, after a person eats and drinks, ein le ela leiv echad, he has only one heart. That means, explains Rav Tzaddik, that if a person does not eat the Kiddusha properly, he's left just with the leiv ksil l'smolei, the left side of his heart that drives him to fate and to avein. On the other hand, if a person does eat properly, he's also left with only one side of his heart. But the right side, the leiv chacham liyaminai. So food is a two-edged kind of a sword. If you eat correctly, it's the Yechalta v'Savata, v'Irachtas Hashem Elakacha. You come to a new Hakara of Emunah and B'tachin and B'Rabbeinu Shalom. If you don't eat correctly, it's Ben Tachol v'Savata v'Ram Levavecha v'Shachachtas Hashem Elakacha. It has exactly the opposite effect. So food is either a blessing or a curse, as a shirus is in general. Money for some people is the greatest blessing in the world. It gives them the opportunity to do so many more mitzvahs. It opens up whole new olam habas for them. And unfortunately, money for others is exactly the opposite. It's the escalator down, a drop into the abyss. So the Torah's bracha of in bechukosai telecha. If you learn Torah and you're makabel upon yourself, the oil Torah, as a result, then asati geshmechem be'itam, and I'll give you all of this food. The bracha really is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is promising us that with the right commitment to Torah, the food will come in its proper time. The nasati geshmechem be'itam. In its proper time means it'll come in the time, it'll come in the manner that'll lead to bracha, and not chas v'shalom, the opposite. When you will eat, you won't forget Hashem. When you will eat, you will remember HaKadosh Baruch Hu is providing for me. You will remember HaKadosh Baruch Hu is bezanu mefanes. And that kind of achila brings to divrei Torah and Kiddusha b'leiv. That brings to a leiv echad, just the right side of the heart. And that is the real meaning of the sequence over here in Parshas Bechukosai, as we previously illustrated. From all of this abundance of food to shalom, to security. In other words, the Kadosh Baruch Hu says, "In bechukosai telechu, v'nasati geshmechem be'itam," I will give you your food and your bracha in the proper way. Where as a result, v'nasati shalom ba'aretz, you will have shalom from the Yetzer Hara. V'shachaftem v'ein machrit, you will be able to lie down in peace and not have to worry of the nesyones and taibas of the Yetzer Hara. It says from one of the big rabbis that an older chassid once came to him and he said, "You know, I lost my brain. I lost my whole slavus for davening and for learning." He was a very chashav yid, a tremendous masnid, a balavoida, one who engaged in sigufim, in restrictions on all of his personal desires. So the Rebbe told him, "Let me hear your Seder Hayom." So he told him his Seder Hayom. He told him how much of the day he spends davening and learning. And the Rebbe was surprised. You should suddenly lose your feshik to Torah and avodah. How could this be? Let me hear now about your siguf, the restrictions you place upon yourself. So the chassid told his Rebbe that he decided he only eats one meal a day. He eats pashachas. Indeed, Chazal tell us how important pashachas is, and he eliminated the food at night. He eats a good breakfast, a well-balanced meal, and that keeps him going for the next 24 hours. Is it easy? No. But look, he wants to eliminate some of his chatoim and aveiros. He has to do tshuva, and this helps to reduce his aveiros. Never mind what it does for reducing his grocery bill. So the Rebbe told him, "You're wrong. In the morning, a yid has so many mitzvahs. He has the mitzvah of tefillin, he has the mitzvah of tzitzis. He goes to work, you have all of the mitzvahs of honesty, of not hurting someone. It comes at night. You're missing a lot of those mitzvahs. We have davening marav and kriyash mashalavis, but once that's over, so you have a whole night period until the next morning where you don't have mitzvahs on a continuous basis. Of course, you have the mitzvah of limud HaTorah, but in order to feel a cheshik in the limud HaTorah, there has to be mitzvahs maisius also. The mitzvah gereris mitzvah that brings the cheshik b'leiv. So if a yid washes at night, you have the mitzvah of netilas yadayim, you eat a suda, you make the bracha properly, you eat like a yid, you learn Torah by the suda, you invite a poor person to come and join you, you wash mayim achroinim, you bench birchas hamazon with kavana, with simcha, which incidentally is a great school for parnasa. So these are the mitzvahs that should be reserved for the vacuum of the night. That should be the fuel for your Torah mitzvahs. But you decided in your own self-righteous way to abstain from eating at night, so you have no one to blame for your lackluster feeling in Torah and Avodah other than yourself. Take my advice. Tonight up tomorrow, wash. So that is if you eat the right way. And that is the bracha. With true amelus the Torah, you'll be zeicha to eat the right way. The kind of eating that will result in shalom from the Yetzer Hara. Now, twice a year we read from the Teichacha. Ezra was Misakein, the Davka to read from the Teichacha in Parshas Kisavai prior to Rosh Hashanah, so that it should be Tichla Shana V'Kil Leisel, as if to say, let the curse belong to last year. In a similar vein, we always read the Teichacha in Parshas Bechukosai, the series of curses, Rahman al-Islam, if we don't adhere to Torah and Mitzvahs. This Parsha we read before Shavuos. And the understanding is that Shavuos is also a kind of a din. For Chazal tell us, Be'atzeres nidan al peiros ha'ilon. Kadosh Baruch Hu decides the success of the fruits of the trees for that year on Shavuos. Fekh Tzaddik, if anything, if we're to be consistent with this idea, we should read the Teichacha before Pesach. The Pesach nidanin ala tefua, Chazal tell us. On Pesach, the grains and the success of the grains are decided. That would appear to be more vital than the fruits of the tree. Furthermore, on Pesach, we bring the carbon oimer that is matir, the new tefua, for regular consumption. On Shavuos, we bring the shtei alechem, which is matir, the new tefua for use in the Beis HaMikdash for karbanos. But again, it would appear that in terms of our essential, our parnasa, the grain that keeps us alive, that seems to be related more so to Pesach than Shavuos. So to be consistent with this idea of Tich L'Shana V'Kil Leiseh, to sort of push the koala to the past year so that the new year begins only with bracha, shouldn't have the Seder been arranged that we read from the Teichacha of Parshas Bechukosai before Pesach? Why before Shavuos? Reb Tzaddik explains, the bracha for the fruit on Shavuos is different than the bracha for the tefua on Pesach. The Pesach nidainin ala tefua. Shavuos, when we bring the shtei alechem to the Beis HaMikdash and we're matir, the new wheat for hegdish, the bracha we're looking for over here is not a bracha in terms of tons, in terms of how much will our fields produce. The bracha that we're looking for over here is what effect will this food have on us. The bracha of Shavuos, the bracha on the peiros ha'ilon that comes simultaneously with the Yom Tov of Kabbalas HaTorah, represents not the quantity of the food, but rather the quality of our ability to digest the food in a Torah-dic way, so that the food leads to, again, the achalta v'savata of eirachtas Hashem alikecha, as opposed to tentachel v'savata v'ram livavecha v'shachachtas Hashem alikecha. Chazal tell us that before Adam and Rishon sinned by the Eitz Hadas, everything grew on trees. Wheat grew on trees. In other words, like an apple that just grows and you can take it and eat it. It's not necessary to do any sowing and plowing and threshing. You don't have to grind the grain into flour. You don't have to knead it. You don't have to bake it. Before the Chet Eitz Hadas, that's how bread grew. You just took it off the tree. Well, there is an opinion that the tree that Adam and Rishon ate from by the Chet Eitz Hadas was a chita tree, a wheat tree. The Gemara in Masechtas Rosh Hashanah says, Hevi lefonai shtei alechem v'aseres, you should be makar of the shtei alechem on Shavuos, and through these wheat chalas, you're going to bring a bracha into the Peiros Se'ilah, into the fruit of the trees. So what's the connection? So we should be makar Peiros. We should bring as a carbon fruit. How do we bring wheat and bring a carbon to the fruit of the tree? So Rashi says in the Masechtas Rosh Hashanah that this is consistent with the Mandiyama, who hold that indeed the fruit that Adam Rishon ate from during the Chet Eitz Hadas was from a sita tree which existed at that time. In other words, Dr. Tzadik, how do we put all of this into perspective? What we're saying is that if Shavuos is prepared for in the right way, with a true Kabbalah HaTorah, so we're being Mesakin our Achila. We're being Mesakin our Achila to the extent that we're bringing it back to pre-Eitz Hadas days, where the wheat and the peiros of the tree are all the same. Adam Harishon ate from the Eitz Hadas, and although we don't know what this means, but there was a Lashon Chazal, suddenly there was a teruvus of toiv and ra, a mixture of good and bad, and it was hard to define it. One person sat down to eat, and he became a better person. Another person sat down to eat, and he became a terrible person as a result. This is the bracha that we're asking for in Shavuos. We're asking for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to correct that, to bring us back pre-Eitz Hadas, to bring us back to the point where we can eat with the security knowing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will send us blessing, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will make us rich, and that wealth is going to turn us into better people, not into lesser people. And that is why, when the choice is to read the Teichacha before Pesach or before Shavuos, Ezra was misaken that we should read it before Shavuos. That's how he made the Seder of the Parshiyos. Because the bracha on Shavuos, in terms of our food, is more important than the bracha on Pesach. The bracha on Pesach may have something to do with the quantity of the food and how that relates with the bracha on Rosh Hashanah. We'll discuss perhaps at a different time. But the bracha on Shavuos relates to not so much the quality of the kind of food, but the quality of our ability to digest the food. And this is more important than anything else. Because if we eat right, we daven right, we learn right, we do tzedakah right, we're better people. If we eat right, if it's an asati geshmechen to eat them, then we're zeicha to sholim of the Yetzer Hara. We're zeicha to pre-Yetzer Hara days. Again, or fall back to before the Chet Eitz Hadas. In a sense, this is what we should be mispal for by every benching. Says Rav Tzadik, when we say Azanis Roelam Kuloi B'Tuvai U'Nativ L'Kayil, we're mispal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that our achila should come from tithe and result only in tithe. There was once a king who bought his child a very expensive garment. He had hoped, or at least thought, that the child was mature enough to treat this expensive garment properly, to keep it clean, to keep it well pressed. And for a while it was working out until the royal prince saw the first sandbox, and he forgot that he was a royal prince, and he dove in. And then another child came by with a bucket of water, and the sand turned into mud, and they were having a lot of fun throwing it at each other. Once again, the prince forgot the fact that he was the prince, and that he was wearing very expensive garments. When he returned to his father's chambers that night, and the father saw what his expensive garment looked like, you can imagine what he felt. Apparently you're not ready for this yet. The child began to cry, and he said, "Father, please don't take it away from me." So the king decided on a plan. He took the garment, had it cleaned, but instead of returning it to the sun with the fur or the metals on the outside, he put it on inside out. In other words, the inside, the lining, was on the outside, and the expensive part of the garment was on the inside. So he said, "My child, I don't want to take it away from you, but I see you're not ready yet for the expensive part, for the princely part to be outside. That part is going to be on the inside. And when you're ready, we'll turn it back over." The prince was still very dejected and very hurt. People taunted him on the streets. They said, "You see, your father doesn't love you anymore. He took away your royal clothes." Until finally someone explained to him just the opposite. "You see how much your father does love you. Instead of taking away the royal garment from you, he simply turned it over. He didn't want the expensive part to be exposed. He saw you're not careful enough, but he's just waiting for you to grow up enough so that he could turn it around. The Dubno Maggid says this is a mashal to explain a medrash. David HaMelech said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I analyzed the teichacha, the curses in Parshas bechukosai, and I noticed that they are in reverse. The parsha of the teichacha begins with a vav, ve'im lo tishmu, yet it ends with a hey, the letter beforehand. The parsha ends b'hasina v'yad Moshe. And David HaMelech takes solace in the fact that the teichacha is in the reverse order, that it begins with a vav and ends with a hey. And the Dubno Maggid says that's what it means. The teichacha, the curses, although we may not understand it, is the Kadosh Baruch Hu's way of taking our clothes that perhaps we weren't quite ready to wear yet, and not to take it away from us, but simply to turn it over. In Galus, it's not that Klal Yisrael loses its preciousness, but the Am Segula Chelik sometimes is on the inside, and the lining has to be on the outside, until you can prove that you're ready to take care of the beggar and worthy of displaying the honor publicly. Right after the parsha of the teichacha, after the curses, or potential curses, Parshas bechukosai ends with the parsha of Erechin. Erechin is a value that is put on every human being, and if a person says the erech of so-and-so, depending on his age, he has to donate a certain amount to Hegdish. What is the connection over here? The Chayz of Lublin says basically what we just said. Never chas v'shalom think, as difficult as things get in life, and sometimes a person feels that indeed there is a midas hadin that is directed towards him, that the walls are caving in on all sides. But don't think for one moment that you have no shavius, that you have no value, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has simply dumped you. There is no such a thing. Every person has an erech. Every person is chashuv by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The parsha of erech is based on one factor: age. There's a chart, there's a table. A man at a certain age, woman at a certain age. It's not based on the individual virtues of a person. If someone says the erech of the street cleaner, or someone says the erech of the Gadol Hadar, he has to pay the same amount if they are both in the same age bracket. And this is the lesson that by HaKadosh Baruch Hu every single yid is chashuv. And even though you think that the world has caved in on you, that the coat was taken away from you, you should know it may have been turned around, but no yid ever loses his chashivas by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The teichacha may mean you are reprimanded. The teichacha may mean you are being cleansed with Yisurim. The teichacha may mean that you have to endure experiences which we don't understand why. But never allow for one moment the thought that it means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says you are worth nothing. Putting the teichacha into perspective makes the teichacha meaningful. And more important than that, it suggests that the actual manifestation of the qualities are not necessary because we already got the lesson. So let's take a closer look at some of the curses in the teichacha and see why they're not really curses, but they're directional signals. The pasuk says, "V'nasati panei bechem, v'gaftem l'snei v'radu bechem seinechem," and then the pasuk says, "V'nastem," you will run, v'yein roidef eschem, even when there is no one chasing you. Now, it's a horrible tragedy when someone runs when there's no reason to run, when no one is chasing him. It means he's living in a panic, he's living in a fear. But on the other hand, there's a bright side to that as well. If one has to run, isn't it better to run without anyone chasing you than running with someone chasing you? So Rashi really explains the in roidef eschem mibli kayach. What does mibli kayach mean? So the Chachamim says that the person who's chasing you is going to see how weak you are. He's going to say, what's the point of me chasing him? He's going to collapse anyhow. He feels there's no need to chase you. You're not going to get anywhere. You're trapped regardless. That's the teichach. But the Vilna Gaon answers a little bit differently. The pasuk says, "V'Elokim yizakesh es hanirdaf." HaKadosh Baruch Hu seeks out the one who is being chased. He has a special rachmanis min hashemayim. You're being chased. And Chazal saying in the Medrash, "Afilu tzadik roidef rasha." But if the rasha is the nirdaf, if he's the one that's being oppressed, then right away he is entitled to a certain amount of rachmanis, which he gets automatically. And therefore, this is the klal. you're going to be chased the ein roides, and you won't even have the nechama of a likim yivakish it's a nirdav. Now what does that mean? What does the Vilna Gaon mean to say you won't have the nechama of a likim yivakish it's a nirdav? If you're being chased, you're a nirdav. But perhaps we can explain this Vilna Gaon with the Baal Shem Tov, which ought to be an interesting thing to do. The Baal Shem Tov teaches the pasuk in Bechukosai Yatzilin, in the capital of Hoidu, which many people say Friday night. David HaMelech goes through the 4 terrible experiences in life, the 4 different things that if someone endures it, and the Ezra Shem when he comes out of it, he brings a carbon taida. If he passes through a desert, crosses a sea, when he gets better from an illness, or when he's freed from prison. In each of the 4, there is one phrase that repeats itself. From their depths, Hashem helped them. When a Yid is makir, whether he's lost in a desert, lost at sea, during difficult times, that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is everywhere, and every ounce of pain, every tiny drop of frustration, every morsel of fear that he has to experience is with a cheshbon. It is a Kadosh Baruch Hu's gzeira. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is here. That is the Hatzalah. That hakara, that itself is mamtik the gzeira. That sweetens the din. That lifts the pressure, min hashemayim. And the source of his Yeshua is directly dependent on his amunah that nothing is hefker. And every difficulty that he experiences is a gzeira min hashemayim for whatever reason, whether we do or don't understand it. And perhaps, ironically, this is what the Vilna Gaon is saying. If a Yid is going through a difficult time, and he understands min hashemayim, there is a tiviyah on him, min hashemayim, they want him to endure something for whatever reason. That doesn't mean that he's not a tzaddik. Adarabba. He understands the world is not hefker, so you realize that the pressure is on, that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is here, that this is an assignment. So you understand you're being chased. As soon as you understand you're being chased, you automatically fall into the category of Elakim Yivakish Esanirdav. That alone is Mamtik Degzera. The greatest Tarzah is the Nastim if you're running the Ein Roides Eschem and you're not Makir, that there is a Hashgach over here that is chasing you, that there has to be a reason that this is happening, that nothing happens unless the Kadosh Baruch Hu allows it to happen. Then you're lost. Then you will not see the light at the end of the tunnel. But if you're makir, that you are near death, that's half the Hatzlacha. Or as the Baal Shem Tov says, eventually the complete Hatzlacha. The pasuk says, V'ga'ala nafshi eskan. And then he asked the stira. Later on the pasuk says, Loi ma'astem, Loi ga'altem. Zakta Baal Shem Tov, the word V'ga'ala can have 2 meanings. It can mean Kadosh Baruch Hu will distance himself from you. It can also mean a lotion of Hagala. Hagala means to kasher something. Now Rashi says, that a person feels he's lost. He doesn't feel the Yeshua Hashchina. Where is the Rabbeinu Shalom? And here's our Nisayon. If our attitude at this point is that a Kadosh Baruch Hu dumped us, then that's how we are teaching it. It doesn't lead anywhere. Because like someone said, I may be angry after the Rabbeinu Shalom, but I have to keep coming on to him anyhow. I may as well make up with him. On the other hand, if you view your Yisurim as Ziga'ala Nafshi Eschem, as Hagala, I'm being kashered now, no one likes to be dipped into hot water. But if you think about the Tahara as a result of it, if I treat this right, then this Hagala leads to the Afghan Zayis B'Yarsim B'Yartzeveim Loi Ma'astim V'Loi Ga'altim L'Chalaysim. If you touch the first Hagala kashering, then the second Hagala is V'Loi Ga'altim. As a result of viewing your difficulties that way, that it's a cleansing process, so you will never be far from the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Parshas Bechukosai is always read before Shavuos. The other Teichim Parshas Kisava is read before Rosh Hashanah. Both Rosh Hashanah and Shavuos are a kind of Yom Hadin. On Shavuos, Chazal say the payers of the world are judged. The payers of the world have deep meaning. Besides for fruit, it refers to our children, it refers to our offspring. Ilan, how can I bench you that your parents are like you? So Shavuos is an extremely important time. It's a kind of din. We're mispal for our ruchnius for the entire year. The Arizal says one who is up the entire Shavuos night, and Mamish is not Messiach Dasim, is learning it all, has a special Haftacha of Shmira. The entire year. This is a key to the entire year that follows. And whenever you have a Yom Hadin, so there's an idea of Tichla Shana V'Kil Tachel Shana Bechukosai. We have to read the Torah beforehand to sort of push the Klala behind us and to be ready for the Brach. So I'd like to share with you a mashal which we once mentioned. It used to be a time you went to the bank once a week, once every 2 weeks. You asked the teller for the balance of your checking account. And then you had to bite your nails a little bit and figure out and hope that all your checks are going to clear. But at least you had some menuchas hanefesh. Then they had ATM machines. Now you can go every single day, even off hours, and worry about your checking account and see how much you have. Now, 3 o'clock in the morning, from the safety of your own home, you can pick up your telephone. And you can hear exactly what your problems are or the lack of such. So now you can worry about it even more at 3 o'clock in the morning. So someone told me that electronic voice is already like part of his family. Your balance is such and such. So a child comes over and he's watching his father sitting by the speakerphone, and the child is confused because he hears the computer say, your balance is $2,000. And the father goes, oh, yeah, yeah. And the child is wondering, he would love to have $2,000. He wouldn't say, oh, yeah, yeah. And then he asks the computer to please let him know which checks have already cleared. And the father's looking in his checkbook, and he hears the computer say, check number 143, which was his insurance payment for $2,432, has been paid on this and this date. And the father goes, Baruch Hashem. And the child goes over to the father and he says, I don't understand you. When the computer told you you have $2,000 in your account, you're sad. And then when the computer tells you that $2,000 in change was taken from your account, you're happy? So the father says, my child, why don't you understand? I knew I gave out that $2,000 check. That payment had to clear. I would be in trouble if it didn't. When I heard to start with that there's only $2,000 in the account, I didn't know if that check went through or not. If that check didn't go through yet, that means it would have bounced. I would have been in big trouble. So that $2,000 was no solace to me. That didn't make me happy. But when I hear that I already paid it, that means this $2,000 that I have is going to stay there. So I know my check didn't bounce. I was happy. Now think about it. That's what Chazal are telling us. Tichla shana b'kil leisel, tachol shana u'birchesel. We know that this life is never easy street. There are always going to be difficulties. There are going to be difficulties during difficult times and even difficulties during good times. Even the greatest of simcha is not without frustration. And it's trying moments. So we know a Yom Tov is coming with a tremendous amount of potential bracha. What we're asking for is that the taichacha is that the klala should be charged to last year, that it has already been paid. This way the bracha stays where it is. Zaz Chazal tell us read the taichacha before Yom Tov, so it should be tichla shana the kil leisel. The klala should belong to last year. The tachol shana u'berchosai, and the brachas that come should come in their entirety. They should be enough to help us get through the next year. It's extremely important to study the taichacha. The Chofetz Chaim says people that walk out or are scared of it, it can be compared to a mashal for someone who is warned. When you walk on that road, there are pits, there are holes, there are cliffs, and the person who's hearing you says, oh my, that's so frightening. You know what? I'm going to wrap a blindfold around my eyes. This way I won't see any of these holes. I won't see any of those cliffs. I won't be frightened. It's not going to solve the problem. His survival depends on his bedafka listening. The more he listens, the safer he is. And finally, Frekti Arachaim HaKadosh. The Taicha begins, V'im loy sishmuli, if you're not going to listen to me, v'loy sasu et kol hamitzvos ha'ela, so on and so on, these things are going to happen. What do you mean, if you're not going to listen to me? Why does the Parsha begin this way? The Parsha should begin, V'im bechukosai timasu, if you're going to do this avera and do this avera, so there's going to be punishment for it. Why does the Parsha begin if you're not going to listen to me? The aside of all problems is the person didn't learn enough. There is no hope to be saved from the Yetzer Hara unless the person is involved in something positive. You cannot just sit back and say, why are my children picking up such bad things? Why are they getting involved in Bas Chazayim? Why are they listening to this? What did you create in terms of what they should do? In Loi Sishmu Li, if you're not listening to me, if you didn't give them what to listen, if you didn't give yourself what to listen, in the void there is going to be negative. You don't have to look for the negative is there. If there's no Zmiris, if there's no Divrei Torah by a Shabbos table, so the Shabbos table won't be a Shabbos table. But a child needs that Shabbos table, and if there is no Shabbos table, he'll find something else to fill the void. You have to give them something to listen to. Imagine a king came over to you to talk, and you just turned away. I don't want to hear. Can you imagine the insult? Can you imagine the ramifications of such an attitude toward the king? When you open up a Chumash, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is talking to you. When you open up a Gemara, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is talking to you. When you open up a Chaydes al-Rabbis, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is talking to you. And if you don't want to open it, that's the king wants to talk to you and you're turning away. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu help that indeed all these lessons should be charged to last year, and the new year should be one of listening and bracha.
This shiur is distributed by Kol Hadas, 11 Stay Chenet Street, Yerushalayim. For donations, please call 02-5383-999. Fax 02-538-0267. Postbox 57035.